I pulled out the Schnabel, and that was the recording where he plays the two movements without interruption.
In Opus 27, number 1.
1, that's the Sonata number 13. And
well, there's actually no interruption at all between the third and fourth movement. It's actually a third movement, a rondo with an introduction, which is very slow. So it's like an overlapping third and fourth movement. Who do you have ready to go?
Okay, I have Artur Schnabel.
Oh,
Anytime you're ready.
Okay, let's hear this great artist. Artur Schnabel, in the last movement, the third movement of the Sonata Opus 27, number 1, Sonata Quasi una Fantasia. What are Schnabel's dates, Matt?
He was born in 1882 and he died, I believe, in 1951. And most of these recordings that we hear by him, in fact, he didn't make any late recordings to my knowledge. These all date from the 30s.
Well, no, he made recordings in the 40s and early 50s.
But not of the Beethoven sonatas, I don't think.
Well, a few days ago, we heard Glenn Gould in a rather condescending way saying, well, the public concert is through.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't really comment on it. That's his opinion, and it was said authoritatively and, to me, pompously. But it's always an interesting thing to ask artists or read what they think, and Schnabel here in his autobiography has a question and answer part in this book, which is part 2. And there's a voice that asks him questions, and here is the voice. I think the radio and records have killed the urge within people to make music of their own, Mr. Schnabel. There are no statistics. I would be terribly interested to know whether the amateurs in the art of music have increased or diminished since the introduction of mechanical reproduction of music. The voice. There seems to be many people now who prefer listening to the same piece of music on records or the radio at home with their shoes off rather than be in a concert hall with an atmosphere of stiffness. I wonder whether the perfection of recording techniques and the possibility of all new pieces as they are composed would possibly result in the displacing of the concert hall. Schnabel. I don't think so. I think that most mechanically reproduced music remains a kind of substitute. The acoustic reproduction is not quite genuine. There is always, at least for my ears, some change. Still, I think it is understandable if some people are now content to listen chiefly to records, even prefer it to being present in the concert hall. At home they have a choice of what to play. They can repeat it and are in more intimate contact with it, while in the concert halls, programs are generally so mixed and sometimes so questionable that the more sensitive listeners do not go. There are very many musical people, more and more of them, who go to concerts only when the programs attract them, when something is played which they have not heard before or have not heard often and want to hear especially. Otherwise, they would rather use their gramophone or listen to the radio. However, there is a contact, let me say a vibration, between living beings. At the concert, there is a living listener and a living performer, while on a record there is only one living being and one object which is, in a way, dead. So this contact, this vibration is lost. And then the voice says, well, I prefer a concert to listening to records. And Schnabel says, I think it should be so. It is only natural. Though music really does not address itself to your optical sense, there is something about attending an original production and being in the same room with the performer. You react differently. I've found that all my life. There is a wonderful invention called a recording, which plays music to more people than any time in history, and yet nothing can substitute for a great performance. And Schnabel's recitals were truly events, because although he was a very detached performer, and he suffered to make this detachment so he was almost not aware of the audience, yet the audience was so aware of him because he played as if a benediction. Every sonata was so that he played, Mozart, Beethoven, and Schubert, were always so totally integrated into that moment. And here we have, of course, recordings made in the 30s some of the tempos questionable, some of the erratic technique, almost in certain times for our moments, for our standards, a little bit intolerable even. However, he played these so many times, and think of all of the extraordinary moments, because every time he comes to a slow movement or any passage like this sonata we just heard, there is a man so deeply involved in the music, and it hits our heart. Well, we will have...
I was going to ask you a question, if I may. You said in the program yesterday, and you've said it several times, that Schnabel was the master of the slow movement. And I'm wondering what it is temperamentally that makes him so. I mean, I quite agree with your assessment of him that way.
Over and over, he saw the problems, the acoustic problems, the touch problems, the tempo problems, and the emotional problems of a slow movement. So where others cannot, absolutely cannot, concentrate, they have to practice their passage work and get everything together, and their slow and their fast playing is brilliant and wonderful. Then the slow playing becomes, well, let's get through with this movement. You know, this is not attracting me. Well, it's tough to work on a slow movement. Let's not use that word work. Work is medicine. You have to be in love with the slow movements, because there's a difficulty compared to the fast movements. Playing a slow movement demands a concentration, practicing them, when really sometimes the notes are not hard compared to the fast movement.
In other words, you approach fast movements with your fingers and slow movements with your head? Is that what you're saying?
Well, everything has to be the heart and the mind and the fingers, but it's just that it becomes neglected. Let's say you're starting to work on a sonata mat of Beethoven's. Well, you have all of these technical things to surmount in the outer movements, and you work hard, and day in and day out, nothing is coming, and you're sitting there 9 hours a day. And then you look at the slow movement, adagio or whatever, and, oh, well, that's not hard, and of course you love it. And it takes a long time to play, let's say only 4 to 5 pages. It's neglected. I'll get to that some other time. And what happens so frequently is that the slow movement is your weakest movement, and your technically more brilliant ones or demanding ones are the ones that you work on. This is natural. It's human.
Are they
you have to get through those difficult movements.
Are they compositionally weaker?
What do you mean?
Well, in other words, are they lesser music than the outer movements?
Of course not. Not necessarily.
Oh, I see.
This is all one total effect,
no, I understand.
hopefully. But they're different, that's all we can say. But the slow movement is usually, certainly in Beethoven, the most profound utterance of the work. The kernel, the inside. So I just think it's a human problem. We'll practice the slow movement when we have time. There's not that many notes. And Schnabel, because of his dedication to the work, would over and over, no doubt, practice every phrase of the slow movement as if it was the most difficult work of all, and it is. Show me the pianist that really plays, or any musician that plays the slow movements well, and there is real technique, art and skill. Oh, apropos of the sonata before this, Opus 26. Miriam Carlson wrote that I really should tell the listeners that this movement was played by a band after Beethoven's funeral.
I can't imagine it being played by a band.
I can hear it.
You can
that way, yeah. Anyway, she is of the opinion that it's the central point of the sonata, and I am too. I just didn't have a high opinion of the quality of the work. This is the 13th piano sonata, which we'll now hear Maria Grinberg, and the exact date of composition of this sonata is uncertain, but probably 1801, and it was published on March 3rd, 1802. It is dedicated to yet another member of the nobility, this time the Princess Josephine Sophie von Liechtenstein, née von Fürstenberg, wife of General Field Marshal Prince von Liechtenstein. And Beethoven first met her at his chief patron, Prince Lichnowsky's, and she became his pupil and one of his patrons. And he must have been on very friendly terms with her, as their respective positions would allow. And his pupil, Ferdinand Ries, was conscripted in 1805 into the Austrian army, and he was penniless, and Beethoven wrote to this princess asking her to assist the young musician or get him out of the army or whatever she could do. So that's a little history on this sonata, which has been totally overshadowed by the Moonlight, which is contained in the second number in this Opus 27. Now, a wondrous performance is coming up by Maria Grinberg of the complete work. Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Maria Grinberg from Russia, with love. Well, you have a message, right?
I have to pause for a message,
Okay.
but I want to comment that performance is really, for me, as perfect, I think, as that could be done. And I hope I'm proven wrong. Not that she's not perfect, but that...
we'll hear certainly one that's different, but this is an extraordinary player. Well, this is WNCN in New York, and we're broadcasting another complete performance of the Sonata, Opus 27, number 1 in E-flat. The artist, Claudio Arrau. Claudio Arrau in the Sonata number 13 in E-flat major, Opus 27, number 1, and Arrau has recorded all 32 sonatas for the Philips label. And on the next program, the Opus 27, number 2, the celebrated Moonlight Sonata. And we'll have various performances, including one by, at least the first movement, Paderewski. And thank you for listening, and have a good day.